All right, it is Tuesday, and we're going to get right into our conversation. And we're talking about what I would consider, I could say, I discovered that the as above and so below, and really what it truly means. We're going to talk about that. I think it was a lie. A lot of stuff that we learned about it. We'll get into it a little more deeper phase for you right now, but just kind of go into the fact that we can start by saying that Thoth. Uh, he solved it. And when we start thinking about where we're going to go with this, and you want to look back 3,000 years ago, he mapped out the prison of our minds and he talked about where it ran and how it worked and everything else. And Thoth actually named what I would consider the mechanism of all that. He built a tool uh, to work to get out of that mechanism. And then the knowledge disappeared. It wasn't lost. Some people hear the stories have been buried. It was sealed in those tablets, hidden behind a phrase so simple that when we start thinking about it, we repeat it as a slogan today. Even a lot of us don't even investigate what it means. And I'll start with that slogan and I'll put it on the screen here: as above, so below. But that is not a spiritual poetry. That is a technical specification. And tonight we're going to go into and we're going to decode it and we'll put it down what Thoth actually intended for this thing and what we're going to go with it. And so it gets pretty interesting when you start thinking about this and thinking about everything from there. But I will say that if I go back to the story, 15 centuries after those things was carved, those words, and there was actually a group of rebels in the Egyptian desert that cracked the same code. And this is where it gets pretty interesting because, well, let me lay it out for a minute. Now, when you think about these people or these rebels that actually dissected this thing or the message that Thoth left behind, and you want to think about the time that they were in and where they were. There was no access to the Hermetic text that they have out there. There was no shared traditions at this point, different languages, different century. In fact, you can almost consider it was a whole different world. And yet they mapped the same prison, all right, named the same mechanism, and then they pointed at the same exit, the way to get out of it. And therefore, when you think about two independent witnesses, and I've said this before, separated by 15 centuries, no texts, no contact, but they describe the same hijacking of human consciousness in the same terms, then most of us probably throw that under philosophy. But I think right now you just want to say, okay, this is what somebody has been reporting or what somebody has actually said when it comes down to this. And what we want to make more notable is that they pay for that report. And we've been talking about things all this week from the Gnosticism and all of these tablets. In fact, those Gnostic texts were seized. Then you start going back into history. You notice that these teachers that was teaching a lot of this stuff were executed until one of the monks buried the evidence in a ceramic jar near the cliff in the Egyptian desert. And it, of course, as I've been saying before, it sat there about 1,200 years. Now, those Hermetic texts, they dismissed those, they suppressed those. And then now, as we're hearing about it, they relabel this stuff as almost like poetry when you start thinking about it. So when we start thinking about ourselves, as I get ready to go into the details of this conversation, you've already sensed something running in your head that you didn't write. And we've been talking about this all week because I've been going through the process of making sure there it is, you see it, you know if those conscious thoughts are yours. And if they're not yours, if you haven't watched any of our videos this week or last week, we've been going through this repeatedly. And so the whole point is these reactive loops that most of us have that we can't break. But then we can go into what I call the patterns that show up in every relationships that we have, every versions of the same fight, every job that you left, trying to escape the same ceiling. And when you recognize patterns, you will understand what's happening. But most of us, even myself, you file it under personality, or some of us, oh, that's just weakness, or oh, maybe Roderick, this is some discipline that you need to work your way out of. You got to get better at these things. And so that's usually how we end up accepting a lot of these things. But if you start thinking about it, Thoth documented the pattern. and he called it exactly what it was, and he left precise instructions for what to do with it. Now, again, you got a lot of people that do a lot of his information out there. So these instructions got called poetry for thousands of years, and that was very convenient for someone to do this. And so tonight, what we're going to do, I'm going to go through four things on my notes here for you. Four separate things. Number one is going to be as above, so below, what it actually means, the engineered version, not the version that's on all these inspirational calendars and some shirts that I used to wear too, because not really going deeper into the meaning. Then I'm going to put the meaning, those two documents in essence of the text side by side, 15 centuries apart. Same sentence in both, by the way, but they're not similar. They're just the same word, word for word. We're going to go through that. Then number three, we're going to do a specific training tool that Thoth built the Gnostics was running without a manual. They had already been doing this. And I would say most of us ourselves has been using what I would consider the broken version of this tool our entire life. And today or tonight, this evening, we're going to go over some of the original ones of this as well. And then number four, all of this means something when it comes to our mind. And we're going to go over that, not the ancient minds, but our current minds, the patterns that are running right now, especially when I can consider this room or this live stream. And then there's also one line in the emerald tablets that has been called mystical poetry for thousands of years. And I'm going to decode that one. I'm going to go, we're going to come back to that. Okay, so we're going to do that. And even though I have it right here, we're just going to come back to that one. And then when I do come back to that, we're going to definitely understand why calling it poetry was probably the most useful thing anyone ever did to keep it from working. Because you remember, everything is always playing and they're doing it. So I hope you are ready for what we're getting ready to do. Put it in the chat, as above, so below. Let me know you're listening. Just type that in the chat so we can kind of, go in that route and get our things clicking. And again, it's going to be some great content and information. So let's start with where Thoth started. We're talking 3,000 years ago. And if you want to picture this, picture him in a kind of a dark cave, because we're not talking electricity lights here. All right. In a dark, part of the Egyptian temple, if you go back to this, and we're talking about a scribe carving words into stone that was never meant to be decorative. In fact, he put it in stone, and we'll touch on that in a minute, because why put it in stone? Well, that was the very reason for doing that. But if you think you know Thoth, and what I have on the screen here, the ibis head, or whatever you want to pronounce it, we're talking Egyptian mythology, god of writing and wisdom. Something I would say we have remembered from a documentary, or maybe we were getting this from, I would say, some probably history class that we all kind of went to at some point. But that version of Thoth was built for you. Okay, it was built for you, and not exactly built, or I could say it was built to keep us away from the real one. And so here is what they never put in those textbooks. So we're going to go into that. Thoth was the first person in recorded history to document exactly how the human mind gets hijacked. And like I said, he leave a repair manual for it. Now we have to start thinking about, again, we're not talking about these, ancient poetry. This wasn't mythology. It wasn't religion. We're talking a diagnostic, a map, and a set of tools that still works today. So the moment that I understood what Thoth actually wrote, not what they told me he wrote or whatever, and everything you thought you knew about your own mind goes under a whole different light. We were just talking about this before the show started, some things about how messy my desk is, and we'll get into that. But therefore, let me show you who this man actually was. Okay, we're going to go with that. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll talk about the emerald tablets. If you haven't heard the story, I'll make it really quick. These was 12 tablets of green stone, and inscribed in there with characters in a language that most people say. And here's where it gets really deep, though. It was described in this precise language that the translator who describes these things as responding to, he's saying that the way thought made these of wisdom, the mind, he said it was like an attuned thought waves releasing the associated mental vibrations in the mind of the reader. Now, could you imagine that Thoth knew this or knew this uh, technology that he knew when to write these things? Because most of the people, if you have, and I'm just talking to you personally, if you have been attracted to reading some of these things or emerald tablets or a lot of these things, what I'm finding out is that that is your consciousness attuning back to something that you were supposed to, because it's like he only wrote these things to the signals that the people who were supposed to pick it up. Let me just kind of use it that way. And then if you're hearing about it, then it's going to register to you now. Maybe you hadn't been reading the stuff, then all of a sudden, like, hey, I'm interested in that. So thought opens the first tablet like this, and this is something that I have in my notes, but I kind of recite a little bit of it. But you can, and remember, I'm always keep using my quote: "Your eyes are useless when your mind is blind." And he wrote, "I thought the Atlantean, okay, the master of the ministries, the keeper of records, the mighty king, the magician now, living from generation to generation." I'm gonna stop right there, because for him to write that, and then we hear people that we know, other influencers, and somebody say, "I'm a reincarnation of thought," because you hear people claiming that all the time. And they could do that if they read this and they want to claim it, because who's going to verify that? I'm just saying. And not that it doesn't exist, because thought said it, from Atlantea, master of ministries. He's the keeper of records, the mighty king, the magician. That word there, just kind of throw it out there for you. But he's the living from generation to generations. Now, let me finish that. He says, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti and set down for the guidance of those that are to come after, and these records of the mighty wisdom of great Atlantis. This is really interesting. And I'm going to read this little part again that really stands out. And he says, set down for the guidance of those that are to come after. So now it's kind of like I'm sitting here talking about, now I'm not reincarnation of thought. I'm not saying that. But if his magic is working and I'm sitting here repeating what he's saying and driving what he's doing, is this magic working? Because he's saying that. He's living on. He's living. And I've already said that a long time ago when I will tell people that, how do I live forever? And I said, well, I start writing books. I do YouTube videos, and I do this because as long as YouTube is in business and they're going to be here, there's somebody who's going to pop up on this video 100 years from now, and I'm going to still be alive through my conversation to them. And if it was great grandchildren or something, they're going to know how their great grandfather thought and all of these things, And so this is how you too can leave your mind behind, whether it's a book or maybe you create some videos and just archive these things. But anyway, he was not writing mythology. He was not writing scripture. He was writing a manual, right, for people who are not born yet, and for people like me and you who are doing that now. And so this is what is captivating about what we're talking about with this today. So I want you to picture this. Picture the temple where these words were first cut into stone, not a church, not a place of prayer. They wasn't praying on this stuff. We're talking about a laboratory. Because remember, it's like this, though. And even if you go watch I forget one of the movies, The Gods of Egypt or something. It's a real good movie. Thought was played by the guy who played Black Panther or whatever. But anyway, it was like he had all of this the laboratory of thoughts and memory and all this stuff. And anyway, we're talking dark chambers, torchlights, stone walls absorbing 3,000 years of human thinking. Now, priests who spent decades training their minds to see what ordinary man could see. Now, these training themselves to distinguish what actually knew from what had been placed in them. And so all this stuff, we can use the word deliberate. It was just done deliberately. Now, that is the tradition of thought built, not worship, precision. The same precision a surgeon brings to the operating room, if we want to use that as an analogy or whatever. But here's what makes this dangerous to certain people. And I'm going to probably just, I'll rattle some few boats down the road. But Thoth looked directly into the human consciousness and he reported what he found, not what a king wanted him to find. Remember that, not what a priest needed people to believe. He reported what was actually there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the whole thing of my outline tonight. And what he found, he describes the third tablet, the key of wisdom. And so when you start thinking about the Emerald Tablets number 3, there was Emerald Tablets number 3, he said in his verbiage, he goes, into men's heart I look by my wisdom and found them not free from the bondage of strife. That's very interesting, by the way. Into the men's heart I look by my wisdom and found them not free from bondage of strife. Not free. Now, if we think about it, that is what Thoth documented 3,000 years ago. Human beings, from what he's saying, walking around convinced that they are choosing their thoughts. People, if I stop this whole show right now, and if we haven't reached some type of understanding over this week or so of what we're going in and how we're going, and if you haven't noticed the change of direction of information that I'm putting on this channel, and truth versus authority, and authority is the mind now, how they're doing what it is, and truth is truth, and we have to fight against all these things. It makes very sense why they are now, you got advertisers, you got all these people, AI, everything is just entertaining our minds. They know it's the mind that controls the vessel. And like he's saying now, human beings are walking around convinced that they are choosing their thoughts. And it would take a hell of an honest person to look into themselves and ask yourself, is what you're thinking? And I'll give you a wake-up call. I've been doing this all week. And if you sat there and think something that pops up in your head and you step out and take that 3 seconds that we was talking about, ask yourself, is this a thought I generated or where did it come from? And you will be shocked to start interpreting that some of these things, you're like, I wouldn't have wanted this thought anyway. Why am I even thinking about this person? Why am I even doing it? This is not even something I want to even waste my mind with. Something is putting that stuff there as a distractions or whatever. But like you said, we're not free. We're not free. And so here's where the most people go wrong when you start thinking about this. Most people hear that or they think it means that we need to be better people, work harder, maybe pray more, maybe be more disciplined when we hear this thought thing when it comes down. But I have to say that is not what Thoth wrote. And I'm giving you my interpretation and everything. So that way you can still go do your own research in there. But I think it's going to make a little sense, though. He's not describing a moral failure when he talks about it. He's describing, once again, a mechanism. And the mechanism has a name when we do us thinking about what I'm talking about here. And so he calls it bondage. Think about it. Where we hear the word bondage, even growing up in other places, and not metaphorical bondage that we're talking about. So I want us to kind of really recall this, not the kind of bondage that the poetry uses. He means it's engineered sense. Now, this is where it gets a little scary. We're talking about a system that constrains the movement without constraining the party, understanding that they're being constrained. Whoa, that's some deep stuff. You get what I'm saying? And this is something that I started thinking about, and I'll repeat this a little bit for you. We're talking about a system that constrains movement, okay, without constraining or constrain the party understanding that they are constrained. So we're having these things, but we're not being held back, and we don't even know we're not. So it's like we're not in a prison until you let them know there's bars, but they're in a prison. If you get what I'm saying, so to speak. It's like it's hard to explain it that way, but I want you to understand that this is how that stuff works. And then I want you to look at what he says in the second tablets right here of the Emerald Tablets number 2. He says that seeing the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that came from beyond. I'm speechless at this point. He said they came from beyond. And let me finish it, by the way. He says, seeing the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that they came from, or the force that came from beyond. He said, knew that they only by freedom from bondage could man ever rise from the earth to the sun. Knew that only by freedom from bondage could men ever rise from the earth to the sun. Let's stop there for just a quick second. And this is where we all can come into this together as a collective conscious family. Why would Thoth say from the earth to the sun? Why do we know that earth and the sun are two separate places? Even back in mythology and all of this, it could be the heavens, it could be something else. Is he saying that there's no way to get off of here unless we free our minds? Is he saying that reincarnation cycle that's been happening? And I'm just asking, you can write in the chat, but is he saying that? Because he did say, knew that they only by freedom, that only by freedom. That's the only way we can get it. And freedom from bondage. And we knew bondage is mine, not bondage as being slaves, not bondage as being trapped on a job 9 to 5. So that means that as we start using those terms, that we have to then start thinking beyond the simple phrase of as above, so below. Now, don't worry, we're going to get to that. I'm going to come to you today. I'm going to get to you today. So just hang on where I'm going with this. Bound by force that came from beyond. This is where I want to focus on. He's not describing an internal weakness. He's describing an external architecture operating on human consciousness. Get that for a minute. He says, again, they are bounded. Let me make sure that we put this right here. He's saying bound by the force that came from beyond. Boy, that sounds like a horror movie or something. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, it's like, really? And like I said, he's not describing an internal weakness. He's describing an architecture that are operating on the human consciousness. Something that arrived from the outside, something that installed itself is where we're talking about here. And that alone should tell us what movies has been trying to tell us, The Matrix and David Icke, all of this holographic world. And now that doesn't mean that we cannot alter the programming, because that's what he's talking about. And now we start understanding the deeper term of conscious awareness in all of these things. So, and something that can be identified, as I said it before, get a name, because Thoth already documented the symptoms. Let me put another photo. I got a few photos just to help me out here. So I want you to think about your own experience right now. The thought that interrupted you this morning before you were fully awake. And it happened. Just think back. The loop that starts when something goes wrong at work. The specific anxiety that wakes you up at 3 a.m. that your rational mind cannot explain a thought or stop it, so to speak. The version of yourself that appears in the rooms around certain people that you don't even recognize. And number one, you can't even control. That is what Thoth was describing, not sin, not weakness. He was talking about a mechanism running in you that was never yours. This is, part of his conversation, so to speak. But here's the moment that I didn't realize enough anonymous with this stuff, because when I understood that the patterns, or I thought, well, my personality was handed to me before I could even choose one that I refused. And you start thinking about it, because who gave that to us? So again, I thought where my personalities, was like, all right, this is, now we can start tying into our zodiacs. Pisces act like this, Libras act like that. We can tie all these different things together, but somehow it may be in our best interest to find out where this stuff is coming from. See, because you did not choose those patterns. Nobody chose them. They were already running before you were old enough to even question anything. And now we get these things. But here's one of the gems of this whole thing, Thoth left behind, the one that changes everything. And this was in the Emerald Tablets number 3. And let me know if y'all getting any value from this today. Just put in the chat that you're getting value, put a word value or something, just so I can just look over here and be like, okay, that's cool. Let me know. So I can keep it coming, because I got a lot for you today, a lot of good stuff. And I just want to know if you're getting some value. So in the 3rd tablet, he says, and I quote, he says, "Cause thou not fear, for fear is bondage, a fetter that binds the darkness to men." All right, we probably say, oh man, that was maybe some scripture from church. Cause not fear from the bondage is a bondage. Cause not fear is a fear of the bondage. And he says, a fetter that binds the darkness to men. Now, fear is not a feeling, as we should notice by that. Fear is what he says is a fetter, a mechanical binding. And thought is not, well, I could say he's telling you that the thing that changed you to darkness is not darkness. It is the fear of it. Think about that for a minute. He's saying that is the fear of the darkness that changed us to darkness. Okay. Maybe I need a better understanding of that. Maybe I can try to use my own life. Maybe I was in a relationship with somebody who was a bad thing, but I was afraid to leave the bad thing. Maybe that could be just a ground surface thought right there. I mean, there's been a relationship with people that you're afraid to break up with the bad thing because of the fear of what would happen when you break up with the bad thing. Okay, I just threw that out there. It may not make any sense, but I'm just trying to relate it to my little simple life, what he's talking about and what it could play. But thank y'all for the values there, who's putting it in there. So let me keep going and keep. So anyway, therefore, the tool is not courage in a traditional sense. The tool is an understanding, or as TK was saying, understanding. But we're going to use understanding, because I'm writing with ebonics today. But the whole point is see the mechanism clearly is where I'm going. And the mechanism will lose its grip. Now, that will be considered a diagnostics that Thoth built. So we can let's go with that. And we can say this is the repair of the manual that was relabeled as mythology when we get to that. So every institution that handed a simplified version of Thoth, every textbook, every documentary, every ancient mysteries show, anything you go look at right now, all of them gave you the Ibis's head and took away the operating manual. And now you know what was in it. And you can start doing your better research and all that and just go deeper. But that's only half of the story when I start thinking about this here. Because 1,500 years after Thoth called those words, as we've been talking about, a separate group of people on the other side of the Mediterranean arrived at the same diagnosis. And they have never read the Emerald Tablets. They had no connection to the Egyptian tradition. How is that possible? And then they wrote the same sentence. And I'm going to put those two things up here in a minute, or put it on. I think I loaded them here, but word from word. But when you see it, you would understand why both of them got buried. Because Thoth knew the mind was the battlefield. He mapped it out. He left the tools. Okay. And the question tonight is whether you're ready to use them. And we're going to get into that. So I'm glad you said, yeah, we're going to use these things. So basically what happened was, that's how we talk in the hood here. A man sat in the dark and decoded the most dangerous ideal in human history. And then he carved it into a stone that couldn't be destroyed because he knew what was coming. Now, we can assume that he knew what was coming because earlier today, a few minutes ago, I wrote it. He said from generation to generations or whatever it was, he knew he was moving from human to humans, and he was a magician. So could he see the future? And is he still here today? As most people say, I'm a reincarnation of Thoth, whatever. But picture this, though. Egypt, 3,000 years ago. And not the Egypt of the tourists and the postcards. We're not talking about that and all of the pyramids and stuff. We're talking the Egypt of working temples, some chambers so deep underground that a torchlight barely reached the walls. The era, if you start looking at these old books, burning oil and old rocks, scribes that sit at the surface carved flat from this purpose. And his tools wasn't paper and ink. It was something harder than that, because what he was recording was not meant for generations. For his generation, it was meant for ours, because he was writing this stuff to last, to go past where it was. Now, once again, did he understand what we were going to be dealing with today, thousands of years ago? Could he have not known that? because he was not writing a prayer. We know this. And he wasn't writing mythology. He was encoding a technical discovery. And the single most threatening idea any conscious could arrive to back that time was the system was built on. He's talking about this. So it's important that we think about this. And the discovery is this, though. So let me kind of point this out. Everything changed when thought decoded the relationship between the mind and the world. So let's kind of dig into that for a minute. Not the relationship that most people assume. We're not going there. Not there. And not think positive and good things happen. Let's just put that to the side. And not the motivational versions of this thing either. We're talking a actual mechanism. And I'm focusing on mechanism and systems and all of these things because somehow we have left off that systems work in the way they work. And it's been a great way for them to block us and keep things from us because they make it look like it's just some folklore or whatever it is versus us seeing what it was. So if you start going back to tablet 3, the key of wisdom, when he writes, we're talking Thoth, he said, and I'm reading, he says, hark, yea, O men, and listen to this wisdom. So he's saying, hey, y'all, hey, I don't know, yay, old man, but old man is an old, not OLD, but I'm listening as an old man if that's what he's talking about because I'm here. What do name? So what he's talking about, and I can ask the question, where do name and form ceases? You know, when we start talking about this anyway. But he's saying only in consciousness, invisible in infinite force of radiant bright is what he's saying. And the word that he uses, which is pretty interesting, is only in consciousness. He didn't say in reality here in this world. He didn't say in the physical body. He didn't say at work. He said only in consciousness. What do we think about that? Because he's not talking about the spiritual realm somewhere else. We can, I guarantee you, we can think about that one. He's talking about the operator system running right now behind every thought that you have. This is what he's talking about. And then he goes a little further in those emerald tablets, number 3. He said, the forms that yea create by brightening thy vision or truly effects that follow thy cause. Now I had to ponder on that one for a minute. Because when I was reading it, I was like, okay. And it says, once again, you know, the forms that yea create by brightening thy visions or truly effects that follow thy cause. Okay, that's fair enough. And if you read that slowly, the forms that yea create, oh, that's my Scooby-Doo, effects that follow thy cause. So that made me think, therefore, what thought is documented is not mysticism either. It's casualty, the external world, every relationship, every institution, every system of power in the downstream of the internal pattern. And he said that the mind is not where you experience reality. He's saying the mind is where reality is produced. Let that sink in for a minute. Let that sink in. And I'll repeat that because you're going to get the same interpretation too. Even though it's mine, I know it's good. The mind is not where you experience reality. I could say that I would dream all the time, but the mind is where reality is produced. And that means something when we talk about later on, as above, so below, as within, and so without. I'm just going to throw that over to the side. Interesting stuff, by the way. So basically, stay in the temple for a moment is what I'm going to say right now. The scribes, okay, the scribe hand stops when you think about it. He reads back what he has just carved. We're talking about visualizing you thought. If you want to say you're a reincarnation of thought. Okay, we're going to let you be that right here. The stone holds the words now, imperishable, by the way, because they didn't go anywhere. That's how they found them. The knowledge cannot be burnt and cannot be compensated. Nobody's taking this stuff. And it cannot be revised by a king or a bishop or anyone with something to protect. And that is why I think he chose the stones. This is why he chose the stones. Now, I want you to understand what this discovery means for every throne that existed in the ancient world. And it goes a little something like this. If the external world is downstream of the external pattern, and if the hierarchies people obey, the authorities that they fear, the ceilings that they accept, are all effects following a cause running in the mind. Now, that's a little deep there. That is really deep once we start thinking about that. Then you don't control the population by force. You control them by what they consider the controlling pattern. And once people know that, and once they can see the pattern for what it is, the throne has no floor to stand on. And that is why they called it poetry now. That is why it's got called mythology. And that is why the Ibius head, a headed god ended up in the history books instead of a laboratory. Because the real version of all of that was an existential threat to every system built on keeping people from seeing how the system works. Just makes so much sense now. And now, when you start thinking about it, here's the game changer, though. Thoth does not stop on the diagnosis. So we're going to go deeper into it. He goes one level deeper. In same Emerald Tablets, he writes, man is a star bound to the body, and to the end, he's freed through strife. Okay. Do I have to repeat that one? Man is a star bound to the body until in the end, he is freed through his strife. I'm speechless for a moment. Because am I wasting my fucking time here on this planet? I'm speechless for a moment. And maybe it's just me saying that. Nobody else is thinking that. You know what I'm saying? A star bound to the body. This is not poetry about human greatness here. This is a precise description of a problem, something vast, something that belongs to a different order of reality, operating through a system that constrains it, so to speak. Oh, yeah, it gets real. It gets real. That's all I'm saying for a moment. And, by the way, the constraints is not permanent. That's the killing part of this, people. That's the caveat of it. This is what got me curious, because he said it's not permanent until the end. What is the end? Because if we go back to symbolism with Ambrose, my end is my beginning. You remember that? My end is my beginning, beginning is the end. Then obviously leaving here is not the end. It's the beginning of something else. Then he's saying he is freed. Thoth is saying bondage as an exit. Now, let me make sure I say this. We got almost 150 people in here. I do not want it to turn to 70 because half of you said I'm out. That is not what we're doing here. That ain't what I said. Just wait it out. Finish the learning lessons. When you leave, go with all the knowledge. So we'll just stop right now and go, okay, well, I hear you, right? I'm gone. Okay. Thoth is saying that the bondage has an exit, and the exit is not death. That's why I said that. I wanted to make sure that you don't misunderstand. And it's not prayer either. And it's not submission to any authority either. The exit is understanding the mechanism. So you can exit now while we're still here, is where I'm going with that. You ain't got to go nowhere. It's here. So at first I'm like, why am I still here, right? I'm like, oh, well, what? But then all of a sudden it's like, it's here. I can get out now and enjoy this projected life a whole different way. Let me know if y'all are getting something from that. I just want to know, because I'm just taking you on some journeys, and let me know where we're at with this, and can you hear me now? You know what I'm saying? Or however you want to say it, can you hear me now? Or whatever. So, and let me continue. Here's a moment when I didn't realize, or how could I say, the moment when I didn't have the skills that I needed. That's what I'm going to say, because it's going to take me to admit this to you a little bit, that I didn't have the skills. All right. And when I realized that I had been handed fragments of my own, or my entire life, everybody's just been giving us fragments, and that those self-help books, those mindful apps, the Sunday morning messages that I was getting, would turn the page some to, and this and blah, 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 and all of them point vaguely in this direction. But none of them went the actual mechanism. None of them with Thoth's specific diagnosis or diagnosis, or however you want to call it. If I use diagnosis, all right, maybe it's some disease, but you get what I'm saying, the diagnostic of the system. They gave me the map with the most important road removed, which is pretty interesting, by the way. And it's not an accident. Nothing just happens here. The simplification of thought, the mythology, the Ibius head, the ancient history was not ignorance, it was precision. And it was removed, or however they was doing, removing the mechanism, keeping keep the symbol. The symbol is harmless. We can keep that. The mechanism is not. So they then give us the symbols of thought and all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden, we ain't got nothing to work with it with. We just now make up our own interpretation. Oh, maybe this means the film. I'm just throwing that out there. But you get what I'm saying? This is how things are going. And another thing that you want to work with the mind is that the mind does not experience reality. You get me? I want you to understand this, so that let us know what's happening with us now. The mind does not just experience reality. It just don't do that by itself. The mind produces it. And it's taking me some time to wrap that up a little bit, out of being creative and all of these things. And of course, thought documented that as well. It's in those emerald tablets. We're talking 3,000 years ago, and a language was built to survive everything that would come afterwards. So obviously he was smart enough to know this, so we'll give him the credit. I'm going to give it to him 100%. And what came after, try very hard to make sure that you will never read it in the way that was meant to be read. It just kind of, I don't know. It was just crazy as can get big. But this is when things took an unexpected turn when I'm going through this stuff, because 15 centuries after the scribe finished this work, so to speak, and of course we know he did it in a dark chamber, a completely separate group. And I said it before, on the other side of the Mediterranean independently arrived at the same discovery. Someone way off. And it's worth noting that. It's worth bringing it up because they had never read the emerald tablets. They had no access to the Hermetic traditions. As I said before, we're talking different language, different culture, different century. And they wrote the same sentence. And like I said, not similar, but the same. So we're going to get into that right now. I said it earlier, I'll bring it back up, but I'm going to show you, or we'll talk about it from word to word. And when you see it, you'll understand why both of them were buried, because they didn't want us to know all of this stuff. And we're going to do that. So I'm going to get to this next part, which is really good, by the way. We're going to get into those documents and stuff. And hopefully, you know what, let's just get right into it. So basically, the main thing is the two documents, the two traditions, I should say. The 15 centuries apart, no contact, same sentence. So we got to keep that into our understanding of the story. And that brings the mystery of it. So in the first part, most people misread it, and it kind of goes like this, or we talk about the encounter, what I'm about to show you. So at first, they see two separate ancient traditions. Let me back up there. Egyptian Hermetic wisdom on one side, and then the Gnostics, desert rebels on the other side. Interesting, historical, unconnected. Everybody talks about it. Go look up some of the stories, Google on YouTube, and they filed them the same way, but separate draws, separate courses in the curriculum nobody takes, right? So, and I'm saying that metaphorically, like in school, they teaching us this over here, and then over there, the truth is over there. And it's like, and so they have to show us some of it anyway, because we're going to discover something exists. So here's what we think it is. But that fouling system is exactly what keeps the discovery from landing. So picture a historian. So we're going to go there, an academic, and I want you to think about this very careful and seriously here. If you think about this historian, or somebody who's trying to be very meticulous in what they're doing, oh yeah, they put on I'm gonna put on my glasses because they all serious and into the text and stuff. I'm working on my acting skills here, and they're serious. And we can say she spent 20 years studying the Haggadah text. She spent 15 years studying the Hermetic traditions, because we get people like this. She knows both of them intimately. and she never put them in the same room. This is what's happening right now. People are doing that to us because academic world keeps them separated, different departments, different journals, different conferences. I don't know why. But therefore, when you think about this individual, she has all the pieces. She just cannot see what they add up to. And we can think about it being what I would consider misread. Misread number one, stupidity or architect. See, the system that keeps the knowledge fragmented is the same system both traditions was warning about. They both said it right there. So on both sides here. But here's the surprising part. The second misread runs deeper. See, when people do encounter both traditions together, when somebody shows you the overlap, so to speak, and I would say you hear it all the time, response is almost the same. Everybody say the same thing. Fascinating. The ancient spiritual world, two paths pointing to the same truth. What? And then they walk away, and then you hear that, and we walk away feeling all elevated, inspired, and we didn't get the tools, though. Today, we're going to get the tools. And this is what, or why I even misread some of the stuff, but it feels like understanding, though. It produces the sensation of insight without the thing that makes insight dangerous, right? The specific operational tool that changes what we do on a Monday morning. You know what I'm saying? I woke up this morning, I was just telling Deborah, and Devin and TK, I was like, hey, I got to clean my desk. As above, so below is not just what we're talking about, is as within, so without. My desk is a very, very distinction of the mirror of what's going on in my world right now. Obviously, stuff is everywhere. You can't see it because I got it all pushed right here. But you get what I'm saying. It's a cosmos of all of this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to straighten this out here too, because me straightening it out here changes what it is in there. And by me coming to reflection in here gets me to changes out here. So they work in tandem. And you can't put that in the museum. I'm telling you that. You ain't making a documentary about it. You could sell it as a wellness retreat. I could do that. Oh, Roderick will tell you how to clean up your room. Okay? But that engineered version, the version that tells you your mind is running a program that you do not write, produces the world that you keep trying to escape. That version does not go into a museum. That version just gets buried. And they're doing it on purpose. Now, I can say this. We know it all got buried because the texts tell us exactly what happened. Listen to the gospel of truth. One of the Nag Hammadi codices that we're going to be doing a book club about was written by the Gnostics in the 2nd century AD, 1500 years after Thoth's scribes was carving into the emerald tablets. These people had never read the tablets. They had no access to the Hermetic traditions. Let that sink in for a minute. And they wrote this in this book. Okay. In the gospel of truth, in that book, it says, as if there were fast asleep and found themselves pray. Let me put it right here. Pray to what he says, pray to the minds. That's what he's going to say. You know what? I'm going to get deep into this right now because we want to get into the word asleep. And we need to do that. So before I do that, I want to play a message again to all of those who, I don't know where my thing is right here. Right here. And those who contacted me yesterday from watching this. And it's just going to take a minute. Then we're going to be right back. And we got a lot more to go into. And it's going to be worth it for you. So let me now just kind of play my message to you. I want to show you the future, tomorrow's leaders, insiders, people who got enough information that they can start their own, pass down to the next generation where maybe their grandkids and all that's going to have things that will be disappeared, will be gone in years. Just like the sacred scrolls that we're talking about that was buried. Stuff that is being buried, but yet copies exist. Information on esoteric knowledge, languages, books, everything, all out here, a library, 20,000 books, 20,000 audio files from all over the world, 5,000 videos. Here, these people right here that I'm showing you, these people that are receiving these drives, who are now in that inner circle, who have now made the investment of this world, these are the people. I just wish that you were one of them. You were inside our inside circle and you had information. And if you want me to get this to you, you can email me on my personal email address, rod@roderickmartin.com. But I will tell you, there is an investment. When you email me, I'll reply to you with the details of what we need to do. And then once you confirm those details and that you want to move forward, then supply your contact telephone number. And I will call you from my personal cell phone, and then we will go from there and set this thing up. And then you have an option to be part of our inner circle if that's what you want. We're going to help each other with collective consciousness of knowledge learning. Man, I appreciate you, and you are going to be appreciated. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, I appreciate y'all patience for that. And for those of you who are definitely considering being on the other side of this information, that I should say, when we kind of go from that. One of the things that I was just talking about is when we look at what was happening, and the surprising part, and when you start looking at the information, it was kind of broken down. So when people do encounter both traditions together, when someone shows them what I would consider the overlap, the response is almost the same. And I will say that it's fascinating because, you know, that's how people look at it, you know, and not what I would say, but most people would. And I use that word, but we have to understand that they're not pointing to the truth when it gets to this. And it is why the misread is so effective, because it feels like it's an understanding anyway, you know. And again, most of us sit here and we think, okay, and now I'm getting the meaning of all of this stuff. I know what the true meaning is. And now I'm better than the person who I was with, the relationship. I'm woke. Remember, we talk about that. I'm woke, they're not. And it just really have changed our whole industry and a lot of things that we were doing that I think we should be careful and think about it. And when we start thinking about that engineered version of it, and again, who, you know, and this thing that tells us that your mind is running a program that you didn't write, that produces what you're trying to escape from, is what the whole logic of tonight's all about. And how do we combat that? But again, it's going to start with you just admitting to yourself that it could be happening, because it is something that they have been working with us and own us for quite some time. And then we start looking in today's society, we can start seeing what we want to call the elite, the big secret keepers. All of these people are now knowing what they have access to the information, and they're using it to their advantage. And that was very interesting that still goes down today when we start looking at the systems and all those things that we have when it comes down to it. And like I said, when you go back to those gospel texts and everything else, and it you know, the main focus was that quote in the Nag Hammadi text was talking about as if they were fast asleep and found themselves to prey to troubled dreams. Now that there kind of stuck out too. When we start thinking about this, as if they were fast asleep and found themselves a prey to troubled dreams. And of course, you remember, as we talked about earlier, that Thoth called it bondage. The Gnostics called it sleep, you know, different world, same mechanism. And now, you know, we take it and we begin to, start telling our family members, oh, you're asleep and I'm woke and I'm awake. But the human mind, running patterns it did not choose, producing a world that feels real, while the person inside believes that they are awake and are choosing freely. So are everybody awake? Do we really think we're awake? Now, here's where things get a little tricky when we start thinking about this. But again, the same attitudes, the same individuality, everything that we're telling people that we are awoke from is the same systems that they're running anyway. So it's like, are people really free? And this is again, and it gets down to it. But I would say the misread number three in that part of this, and then almost works. So somebody reads both traditions. If you start thinking about it, they see these overlaps. They understand it's not coincidence. Once you start looking at, when I start seeing them side by side, like, and you've heard me say it before, coincidence is God's way of being anonymous because there is none. But the whole point is, this is a universal spiritual truth that wise people across cultures have discovered independently. Consciousness is the key. Awareness is the answer. You got it? So even our newest, latest shirts that we are talking about, I don't know if I have my bag over there, but it's conscious awareness, and they'll be up, and they might be in the bag over there. I don't know, but don't worry about it. That was going to be the only shirts I'm going to sell pretty soon. They'll be on the website, and I'll let you know by Friday. Conscious awareness. We have to go there. Consciousness is the key. Not I'm in the conscious community. That's an identity. There's a lot of people in the conscious community that ain't conscious. There's a lot of people in the spiritual community that'll never reach spirituality. They're just in it. But consciousness is the key, and awareness is the answer. This is what he's been saying. But they're still reading the mechanism as philosophy and still treating it as something to believe rather than something to use. That's what I've been saying too, because if you step out of it now, if you begin to be aware of who and what is going on and not in it individually, then you will know to use it instead of believing it. I know that's going to be hard to fathom, but when you go to sleep tonight, think about what I just said. Start thinking about the things you need to use and stop believing. I know it sounds, I can use something I'm believing. No, we need to use it because somehow the trick is already there. And the Gnostics saw the same failure. They saw it in these books and stuff. And they had a word for people who carried knowledge without activating it. They had a word for them. And if you want to really I would say, I ain't gonna say the word because some of y'all call yourself that. I'm not gonna say the word, but I'm gonna spell it for you. Should I spell it for them, y'all? At least they'll get the word. I'm gonna spell it for you. I'm gonna put it on the screen, and then y'all can do that. Because when I say it, some people are gonna take it personal. But they got a name for these people. Let me see if I can put it on the screen. If I can just type it, create a banner. I just want to type it on the screen. And I'm very capable of saying the word, by the way. It's not that hard. It's not my ebonics and stuff. And it's right here on my notes. I got it in bold print. And y'all say it after me when I put it on the screen, because I'm going to tell you what they call this. Okay? And they have a name for the people. Boom. Booyah. Oh, that ain't booyah. Booyah. What we got there, y'all? What we got there? Y'all should see it there. What? Is that big of a delay? Oh, what we got there? Yeah. The Gnostics are saying the word for people who carry knowledge without activating it call themselves psychics, people of the soul. They're capable of understanding, is what they're saying. They're not yet using it. And the difference between knowing the tool and picking it up is a whole different ballgame. Now, I'm not trying to validate that, but it's in those books. And we'll come across that. And if you're a psychic, all it's saying is go deeper, is all I'm thinking. It's not saying something wrong with you, but obviously they got it in there. And it's probably some tool that they're using against, because you guys are so gifted, and meaning you're powerful more than you know. So he's saying, Thoth is saying, these psychics, y'all need to go deeper. Y'all are probably the links to a lot of this stuff. And this is in the books. This is in the books. They call them psychics, people of the soul. That's powerful, by the way, not in a negative sense, but capable of understanding is what they're saying, but not yet using it. And the difference between knowing the tool and picking it up. Psychics go deeper. Obviously, that's a claim and a call to all of you. Go deeper. Go deeper. And here's where the coverings of all of this stops being interesting and start being what I call urgent, like I'm trying to bring it up. Because if you look at the hypostasis of the archons, say, another Nagam of the text, the desert rebels, no Hermetic tradition, by the way, no access to the emerald tablets, are describing the relationship between the inner world and the outer world. Now, they also write something too in the archons in that Nag Hammadi text. They talk about it. Okay. And by starting from the invisible world, the visible world was invented. Ain't that interesting enough? For by starting from the invisible world, the visible world was invented. I was just studying that the other night, because that is where it's so above as above, so below comes from. One of the main factors, because from what we cannot see within ourselves, what we projecting over here, that's where it comes from. So obviously, like I said, this stuff is a mess. You can't see it. It's hidden right now. Almost hidden from me. It's the same way as hidden from you, from me seeing the inside of myself, but then I'm sending the out. Well, that was good right there. I can go and get paid for that one. But just like I can see it out here. Work with me, y'all. We can have church now, baby. You go, boy. You know what I'm saying? Just like it's hidden from you and you can't see it. So you will be the inner me. And then I can see all this stuff out here. I mean, I wish I can show you stuff everywhere. Really, for real. So from the invisible world, the visible world was invented. Now go back to Thoth, tablet 3. Okay. The forms, yea, he said the forms that yea create by brightening thy vision are truly effects that follows thy cause. Now, where did we hear this at? Effects follows cause. The visible follows the invisible. You know what they told us it was? Cause and effect. They just left it on a surface level. You know, we hear that every day. In fact, they call it one of the 7 spiritual laws. Cause and effect. Dog said, oh, that shit deeper than that, bro. Y'all better go deeper than that. That's a surface level. So they give us a little bit, but then we take it and run with it as poetry, is what we're saying. Crazy. The 2 different civilizations, 2 different languages, like I said before, and I keep reiterating because that's the most important factor. Centuries before them, no shared communication. These people, it's like somebody on this island and that side of the world where there was no boats, and all of a sudden they knew the same thing, which was that 1,100 monkey effect. If y'all remember that we talked about that, how all these monkeys were sharing consciousness some kind of way. Remember? Okay. And that is not a coincidence. That is not cultural borrowing. That is 2 independent witnesses, like I said before, they're saying this thing is real. And I want you to feel the weight for that for a moment. The emerald tablets carved so deep into stone that they could not be burnt. The codexes, the Nag Hammadi codex, is sealed in a ceramic jar near a cliff in Egypt, desert, so to speak. All right. Both hiding, both waiting, both carrying the same message in different languages. And that does not happen with mythology. That does not happen with physiological poetry either, people. That happens when 2 groups of people independently discover something that someone with power does not want them to have. And that proves that we could possibly have a collective consciousness somewhere. All right. And we can really think about that. And when we use to think that these things were separated spiritual traditions, studying from historical interest, you know, we're doing it. We probably can just close our eyes and get it from each other. But now the question changed entirely when we start thinking about this, because when I started thinking about this, here was a moment when I couldn't see the bigger picture at first. And I was like, when I was just treating everything like, again, back in the day, just like everybody else who read these books, it was a fascinating history instead of asking a question that actually matters. How many of us done that? There's a lot of you can raise your hand, just like I did. We read the Emerald Tablets. Maybe you bought Billy's book or whoever's book, and you read it. Okay, it was great. It was interesting. The question was why. Remember, I always told you, there is nothing more important than why. Stop focusing on what they're doing in this world, what and all that. We need to know why. Why takes you to a whole different level. In fact, why is so intrinsically the best way to observe and explore that every kid, before you beat it out of them, every kid will say why for the most simplest thing. Hey, take out the trash. Why? Because why? Until they were told, because I said so. And if you ask me again, I'm gonna beat your behind. Because we came in as these spirits as young when we, until society beat the question up. We came in knowing to ask why. Kids will ask the parents why. And we're sitting here thinking it makes sense. Why would you ask me that? You're 8 years old. No, they're saying what you're saying don't make sense to me. Ever think about that? That the kids go like, why? It just don't make sense. Y'all get what I'm saying? It's like we've been seeing this stuff right in front of us all the time. And why were they both buried? Because Plato was not buried. Aristotle was not burnt. Homer survived every empire that rose and fell 3,000 years, if you go back and think about that. But the Hermetic tradition got relabeled as mysticism, number one. And the Gnostic text got sealed in a jar in the deserts. That right there takes us to a whole bunch of stuff, right? And once we think about it, and the gospel of truth tells you why. It's in that thing. So go look it up, gospel of truth, the Nag Hammadi. And they tell you why with a quote that I have here. And it says, and happy. Now, listen to this. And happy is the man who comes to himself and awakens. Woo-hoo. And happy is the man who comes to himself and wakens. That sentence is a threat, not to God, not to heaven, to every system that requires you to be asleep to maintain its authority. So all of a sudden, everybody keep telling us there's no happy life out here. You know what I'm saying? There's no way to, whatever. They're saying happy is the man who comes to himself, meaning you find yourself, not just saying I'm walking around and I'm waiting. Because you got to recognize. Remember, we said that in the other two videos. So make sure y'all do that. If you're here for the first time, please subscribe to the videos. Go look at the one about who's in the minds, the one who pretended to be God yesterday, those two. Go look at all those. Because like I said before, they said for us to be thinking happy is the man who comes to himself and awakens, they were like, no, this is a threat. We don't need these fuckers to be happy that way. We think happy is in the material world. That's what they got us trained on. That keep us buying more. That keep us doing all the stuff. We're going to buy the new Jordans. We want to be happy. That they changed it on us. Thoth said it's bondage, it's freedom, it's being awoke or awakened. Your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. He's saying that that's where it is. So we're talking to every system, like I said, that requires you to be asleep to maintain the authority. So therefore, the question is not what did the ancient traditions teach us? So I don't want you to go there. Remember, we're not talking about the what. The question, or we will go what, but the question is, what does it do to a person when they actually apply it? And that's what they were saying about the psychics being so powerful, who they are. The people of the soul. Why? They're the people of the soul. If you're a psychic, they're calling you into action. Go deeper. If you got any psychic in you, you are the ones. They're saying it. You're the people of the soul. That's deep, people. That's very deep. That's more than just walking around talking about I'm psychic. You're the people of the soul, not the spirits, the soul. I'm going to leave that there. That's a whole, probably another calling. We about to need to just put a whole signs up. Soul people. That's soul people right there. You get what I'm saying? But I'm just saying that they're saying, what did it do to the people when they actually apply this? And that, by the way, is exactly what was in those Gnostic text, the Apricon of John, the documents in the most precise language in the entire Nag Hammadi libraries. Because that text describes something neither mythology nor philosophy could ever explain. It describes a moment, a specific moment, by the way. And when the knowledge enters a person, now think about this. So it says when a knowledge enters a person who has been asleep or asleep, I can pause right there. I don't even know if y'all want to hear the rest of that. You may not want to hear it. You not want to hear it. It says a specific moment when the knowledge enters a person who has been asleep. And what happens next is what any of these institutions who buried these texts wanted you to know was possible. They didn't want you to know. So we're going to read it to you. I'm going to read the passage word for word. And when you hear it, you'll understand why that jar was buried 1,200 years ago. Okay. And I'm glad you asked. And by the way, our show is brought to us by Charm and Malas. Make sure y'all go and get your malas. I need to start back wearing them. I got a whole shelf full of malas right here. I mean, love them, by the way. Judith, my friend, makes our custom malas and everything else. She's going to be here in Dallas August the 8th. So if y'all in Dallas, you might want to come up here, get her to go ahead and craft out your custom malas and everything else. And then today, I went to the foot doctor to go get to the foot doctor without pain, walking out of pain. My foot hurt so bad coming out of the doctor. However, I got some good old shea butter for pain. Okay, pain never smells so good, especially on the feet, right? So I'm rubbing them down and everything else. And so we got that. And of course, that is Make It Sewn. You can find the descriptions and stuff. Go to any of our videos and find it. And come and meet Holly in person here August the 8th and get you some personalized shea butter, baby. Make sure you get that. So I just want to throw that out there to let you know. So I told you what the passage that I'm going to read, okay, word for word, from the Apocryphon of John. One of those texts sealed the ceramic jar for 12,000 years, so 1,200 years, I'm going to put that. And then I'm going to read it now because I know it's time and we got a little more to go, but this is going to be good. We just scratching the surface tonight, like I said, and when we finish tonight, it's going to be good because every fragment that you've been handed about consciousness, about control, about your life keeps reproducing the same ceiling, lands different after you kind of hear this passage. And don't be expecting this whole wild thing. Remember, everything was so simple. It was simple to know what we're talking about. And the passage, I would say, in the moment that the knowledge enters someone who has been asleep. Remember, that's what they was talking about. So if you're not driving, you can close your eyes if you want to. Okay, but if you drive, and keep them open, please, unless you got a Tesla self-driving car. Okay, if you ain't got one of those, don't do it. Unless you're in an Uber, don't tell the driver to listen to them. Because we're not talking about ancient Egypt here, not a desert cave. We're talking about your room where you've had the thoughts that we're going to be talking about, the one that keeps coming back, something that's running that you did not write, you know, that version of yourself that you keep trying to become, you know, and being held in place by something that you cannot name. Remember, we talked about that. You know, you're in that room. We're going to be at that place right now. So we need to be in the now. Okay. I'll put a little, you know, something on my screen for those who are still eyes open. All right. So Apocryphon of John, the Nag Hammadi text, the 2nd century AD. Here's what it says. And so I put a shot on the screen that I thought was kind of help us out here to kind of know the power of this. And I'll read it with my not my poetry voice, but my voice. I've entered the midst of their prison, which is the prison of the body. And I said, he who hears, let him get up from the deep sleep. And he weep and shed tears. Bitter tears he wiped from himself, and he said, who is that calls my name, and from where has the hope come to me? Why I am the chains of the prison. That's very interesting when we say this. And I can kind of read this again here a little bit, you know, a little more fluent, I would say. And then we'll break it down because it was, again, you can find all this stuff. But it makes sense when you start hearing the things that they're talking about in how they said. It says, once again, he, We're going to go there. Or he said, I said is what he said. So we're going to start with I entered. So obviously he entered. I entered the midst of their prison. Now think about the word prison, which is the prison of the body. And it says, he who hears, let him get up from the deep sleep. And he weep and shed tears. Bitter tears he can wipe from himself, he said. Who is that calls my name? And from where has the hope come to me? And while I am in the chains of the prison. Now, who is that calls my name? From where has this hope come from? And while I am in the chains of prison. This is not an accident. This is the morning. This is the 3 a.m. This is the version of you that knows something is wrong but cannot name what it is, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. And the text is telling you that the call had already gone out. The knowledge is already knocking. The only question whether were you going to get up from the sleep. And that's when we want to talk about people who, you're asleep and I'm woke. Man, just remember you were there. You were there. Your ears was dirty too. Maybe you couldn't hear it. So our job is not to ridicule these people. You were fucking there. Our job is to learn more and be ready when they wake and come asking. When they come to you, because there's only one shot before they're ridiculed, thrown down, turned, made feel stupid. But when they come to you, you're ready to tell them, because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That's how it's supposed to work. And the only question is whether you're going to get up from the sleep. That's what they're saying. So this is what changed everything, so to speak. Because once you hear that passage through everything thought already documented, so to speak, the mechanism becomes visible in the body, in the prison. We're stuck in here. Our minds can get out. But we are in these bodies, by the way. That's what I get from it. Maybe you get something else. Because once you hear that, like I said, and you understand that once that mechanism is visible to your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. Once it's no longer, the mind is no longer blind. So here it is. The whole thing, the full decode, the thing that was carved into the imperishable stone and sealed in the ceramic jar, that two completely separate civilizations who had every reason to hide it. And you know what they said when they did this? They called it as above, so below. It's not poetry. That's what they called it. They called it as above, so below. Not a motivational slogan that a lot of us hear and say. It was a technical specification. And I want you to think about the pattern running in your mind right now, the automatic hierarchy systems and all, the instant categorizations, the good versus bad, the versus us versus them, worthy versus not worthy, powerful versus powerless. You did not choose those categories. They were installed. You know how they always say that nobody is born with racism? It was installed. Because you are old enough to question everything. This is what I tell you now. Question everything. Those patterns, the ones that's running below awareness, just start questioning these things. These are the architectural blueprint for every external struggle that you ever struggled against. We all are struggling against something that came from here, and we're projecting it out. But let me be a little precise about what I mean, because that company that we're talking about has a ceiling that you can't break. It's not just a company with bad management. So don't go there. It's an external reflection of the hierarchy pattern that has been running inside of you before you can even talk. The relationship that keeps reproducing the same dynamics, different person, same dynamic, is not bad luck. It is the visible world following the invisible clause, right? Cause and effect. Invisible world following the invisible cause. That's what we've been saying. And a political system that keeps producing the same results, no matter who runs it. It's not a broken system. It's a perfect system, perfectly reflecting the collective internal patterns of people living under it, so to speak. So Thoth, he said the effects follow what the Gnostics said, that the visible world was invented by the invisible world. So we need to start seeing from the inside why our lives is what it is on the outside. Why is my desk a mess now? I know why is a mess got here because of what's going on in here. So I need to find out what's going on in here. Then it won't be looking like out there. You get what I'm saying? So once again, you're still going deeper. Therefore, do not change the world by fighting what is above. That's what I'm just saying. You change the world by examining what is below in you right now. This is what I'm learning. I'm learning that, okay, I see this sugar honey iced tea out here. I see in the car, or I see a relationship I used to be in. I see some company that I keep or whatever. That's fine. And I know that it's from the inside. So then what? All you're gonna do is blame the inside? No, you go in there and you go in there right now and you start figuring it out. And when you get the why in there and then start projecting it from there out here, it's a whole different ball game. And we can experience that together. I'm not telling you, it's not an overnight thing. It's not going to happen tomorrow. We spend all our lives where we are now. We can spend the rest of it going another direction with this thing. In the gospel of truth, written 15 centuries earlier, thought without access, like I said, to those texts, describe what happened the moment a person actually does that. So I know you was waiting for that because I wrote it down. Because we have to know what happens when we find out from the inside. Well, I'm glad you asked. He says that his ignorance vanishes of itself. So all of a sudden, itself, we'll get into that in a minute. He says his ignorance vanishes of itself, and as the darkness vanishes when the light appears. So all the deficiency vanishes in perfection, vanishes of itself. Not through the struggle, not through discipline, not through fighting the external structure. Remember, I was just talking about that. Through seeing. And this is why you heard me start saying that we got to stop walking around here talking about seeing is believing. No. Believing is seeing. Your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. We got to see. And you can't see when that mind is jacked up. You ain't seeing nothing right. See, the moment that consciousness turns into attention on the pattern running below awareness, the pattern loses its operational grip. Not because you destroyed it, because we're not doing it. It's too powerful for that. It's because we saw it. If you go in there and think you're going to destroy some of this and get rid of this and kill all this, that's just like trying to wipe out your DNA to a parent over here who's a killer. I don't want the killer DNA in me. Well, drain your blood and see what happens. Get it out. See what happens to you. That's not it. Just see it. Just see what your parents are. A freaking killer. My mom and dad's a killer. Whatever. But once you recognize, you don't have to be one. And seeing things cannot run in the dark the same way. It's just plain and simple. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And here's the moment when I felt I mastered the skills that I needed. Okay. When I understood that the tool was not meant for effort. Because, see, we put a lot of effort in this. We go to all these trainings. We go to all of this stuff. We're going to do this. We're going to, eat 22 days of apples. Just whatever. Apple a day, keep the doctor away. Whatever they start telling us. But when I understood that a tool was not more effect, but more discipline, more resistance. You get what I'm saying? That tool was recognition. You got to see the program. You got to name it. And the program can no longer run as if it was, or if it's you. It's not going to be you. You now can look on the outside. That's not me. See, I learned a long time ago, somebody say some crap and it could be something. I say these words. I may have did what they say I did, but I ain't that. Yeah, I've heard things the ex-wife said about me. I go, hey, I may have did what she said I did, but I ain't that. That's good. That's good growth, by the way. Yeah, I might have did what I said I did, but what she said I did, but I ain't that. Not what she trying to name me. Nah. Mm-mm. And that is what as above, so below means, people. Not a beautiful ancient phrase, not a mystical wallpaper, diagnostics. That is exactly what he meant for this stuff to be. Now, the word, as above, so below, we're talking about the word above you, the world, the institutions, the ceilings, the systems that seems immovable are a mirror. They are showing you exactly what is running below in the pattern, in the program, in the mind that produces the world before you have a chance to choose it. And so here's the piece that every institution buried these texts understood in hope that you will never understand. And as TK would say, understand. The moment a person sees this, the moment that they can look at the external structure and recognize the internal pattern producing it, they stop feeding it, baby. You don't give it what it wants no more. Think about it. Let's just talk about this on a personal level. The moment you realize somebody you in a relationship is draining your energy, what do you stop doing? You stop giving them your energy. You just don't give it to them. It ain't that you change. You're like, I still love you, but you ain't getting that. You know what I'm saying? Not through a rebellion, not through a protest. You just like, man, she's draining. And we use the word toxic or whatever y'all want to use, but you get what I'm saying. But the resistance still operates inside those rules. It's not going to go anywhere. That person's not going to go anywhere. They just simply stop because you cannot unknowingly run a program on a consciously observing person. This is not what spiritual philosophy. This is how consciousness works, people. This is how it works. And Thoth knew this. The Gnostic knew this. And they both paid the same price for knowing it, by the way. All right. And so every authority that has ever told you that this material is mythology, every institution that handed you the Ibius head, the one that looked like the bird, whatever, and removed the operating system. They didn't tell us what the meaning was. Every system that they turned as above and so below into a decorative phrase of wellness websites, they were not confused. They were precise. Maybe they didn't work for the other side. You didn't think about that, did you? Because a person who cannot read the diagnostic cannot use the tool. And a person who cannot use the tool, who keeps producing the same world, and a person who keeps producing the same world keeps needing the same systems that they were before. Now you wonder why you hooked on that dude or that woman or that situation and all that, because you were not sleep. It's not the word. But remember, they was burying these people for not being ignorant. They was burying them because of the maintenance. They didn't want people to keep knowing what this is. Just hang on with me. We got a little more to go here. And I promise you getting something out of it. I told you yesterday, it'll be a little longer today. And after this, we'll shorten them up. But I want you to sit with that for a minute. That jar in that desert, the tablets that was too hard to burn, the two civilizations, the 15 apart, those civilizations, and all of them encoded the same thing. And I keep coming back to that because that's that 100 monkey thing, consciousness connecting all over, and they don't even know each other. They both confirmed it, everything. But here's the one thing that no one tells you. That program wasn't running in history. It wasn't running in ancient Egypt either. That program is not running in a Gnostic cave in the 2nd century AD either. That program that they're talking about back then is running now. How did they know that? It's in the room. It's here. It's in the room with us. It's an automatic response that activated when I said things. I could say something today and you'd be like, oh, whatever. It's activated. And Thoth left the Pacific techniques from working with it, not philosophy, not belief. He wrote or left us the techniques. And those Egyptian priests, so to speak, that trained for years using precise mythology that Gnostics was running without a manual. Somebody knew this. So, like I said, before we get out of here, I'm going to give you partial of this manual so that we can go there, so to speak. And a couple other things too. Let me know if y'all ready. Just let me know that you want us to go further. Let me know to go further. I gotta look at the chats. Let me know, can we go further? And all of this stuff. Can we go further? Come on, pump me out of there. Just give me the. Let me know. Standing by. Okay, we got standing by. So I'm watching the chats. I don't see it. Go further. Okay, thank you. All right. All right, we got 2 Go Further and almost 200 people in here. So make sure y'all like the video. Everybody take time and like this video to send the algorithm and everything. Please like this video right now while I get ready to set us up to go further. Okay. All right. So someone said they like that. Cool. I appreciate it. Keep going. All right. Now we got it. Now it's coming in. It's coming in. It's coming in. Okay. So I said I was going to give you the manual. And therefore, I want you to understand it's not a metaphor. It's not an ancient story to reflect on. It's not an ancient, it's an actual tool, I can say, and it's 3 parts in order to do this. Now, we're talking about the way Thoth built it, the way that the Egyptian priests trained it, and the way the Gnostics was running it without knowing that they had the original instructions, okay? We're going to get into that. And so the next part is crucial. See, the prefix in the emerald tablets, the translator's notes before the tablets themselves contain a line that stops most people cold. And they read it and they just kind of just move past it. They just move past it. But if the operating instructions, but it is, from everything, and it's in the emerald tablets prefix, the beginning. Most people just pass this up. It says the truth. Listen to it now, and then you're going to understand why our podcast exists. It's in a prefix. And how many people read prefixes in books? I barely did. All right. Nobody does that. It says the truth has existed, ready to be assimilated by those who enlarge their vision by turning inward. It's not in the emerald tablets. It's not in 1, 2, and 3. It's not way down in there. It's right at the beginning, where 99% of the people don't even skip it because we think it's the table of contents, and we just skip right over that bad boy. And it says the truth has existed, ready to be assimilated by those who have enlarged their vision by turning inward. Your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. You got to look inside. Enlarge their vision by turning inward is what it's saying. Not outward, not upward, inward. That's the direction of the tool itself. That is the axis of the whole mythology that runs on when we're looking at this. The mechanism that you have been fighting is not outside of you. It's running inside of you. And see, there was a dude named Robert Trudeau, forget his name. He got his new books out. And of course, he's been in prison, but they don't sell everybody stuff he can want to. So he started the phrase of as it within and so without, or whatever. And when I first started doing that, I couldn't really, know that it ties to the same thing as above, so below. But everything needs to come from within us. And you cannot see something, right? You cannot see something you are identified with. So therefore, the first move, always the first move, is turning attention inward. That's the first thing I will tell you to end up doing. So let's focus on the thing I put on the screen for you. Toward the pattern, toward the program, toward the thing that is producing the world you keep trying. And I want you to look at this image for a minute, because I talk about this in passing all the time. And I talk about the question mark. Remember the question mark that we use in modern day English and how they say that it was inverted and everything. So look at this image for a minute. The question mark is a kind of that path like you see now, and it comes back into the dot down at the bottom. And somebody said, let's put this at the end of sentences so that people will ask outward. They're going to ask questions. They're going to ask stuff outward. But the ancestors made that symbol because they were saying at some point that the answer is within you. Ancestors left us the question mark all along, the symbol itself, our ancestors. Remember, modern day man takes those languages and we put it behind sentences. So if I get you to ask me the question, when you think about these people, then I'm going to be able to guide the answer to you. But it was always meant to go inward toward the thing that, again. And so we have to think about, why was this happening? Okay. So you're going to go toward the program. You're going to go toward everything. You're going to go into this. So that's the first thing I want you to know. In the picture, the Egyptian priest Thoth was training, not monks sitting in silence of sake of peace, not engineers, not conscious engineers sitting in the dark stone chambers, not to, people that's going in this total darkness to escape the world. He said to examine what was running in them that was producing the world. So right now, as we are reiterated as much as we have tonight for this last hour or so, you should now know whatever it is that you're getting right now, and whatever it is, just start to believe, not to see. What seeing is to believe. We're going to go the way, but you got to start understanding what is it going on inside of me. What is going on deep inside of me? What is that? What is going on deep inside of me that I want to carry this weight? What's going on deep inside of me that I think that stake on the outside that I see is so good and so good for me that I want to go buy a big one, a 20-ounce one? What's on the inside of me is telling me that that's good for me? Why am I not seeing it as a threat to this body or wherever? I'm not saying stop eating it, just don't eat 20 ounces. You know, eat about 6. You know, it's taste the steak, though. You want to taste that bad, but you get what I'm saying? These are things that I'm starting to reflect on. So they train for years to develop one specific capability, and that's the ability to observe a thought or emotion without becoming it. So I should be able to think about that steak and not eat the cow and start looking like the cow. You get what I'm saying, right? You know, it's like you go. I'm just using myself as an example of the crazy thoughts that I can put this thing in. And we're talking about that being a skill. And that is what the whole mythology is building toward, not wisdom. It's more what we call an abstract, and the enlightenment as the destination, and practical ability to watch your own mind operate and to know the difference between what is authentically you and what was installed. So this is where now when I get certain thoughts, I'll say, is this something I manufactured? Is it in my best interest, or where did it come from? Because see, Thoth gave us the exact techniques in tablet 6. He called the key of magic, Pacific, operational, and it's usable today. In fact, let me give you that. He wrote this in tablet 6. When unto thee, so to speak, when unto thee as a feeling, drawing thee nearer to the darker gate, examine the thin thine heart, so to speak, and find it feeling thou has come. So let me kind of put that up here for a minute. So he is saying, so that you and I both understand this. And he goes, when unto thee comes a feeling, drawing thee near the darker gate, examine thine heart and find it in the feeling thou hast have come within. And if thou shalt not find darkness, then on thoughts, banish them from the place in thy mind. Why he says that if we don't find darkness, if thou shalt not find darkness in their own heart or their own thoughts, then you want to banish them. You know, and again, these are things you can go study for yourself. And when you think about it, he says, examine thine heart and find if the feeling thou hast has come from within. Is this coming from within? Is this manufactured? Is it my true self? Is this how I truly want to feel? Is this how I truly want to interpret this argument that we're having? Do I really want to feel anger? Not am I mad, not am I'm angry and you're pissing me off. Not telling people that. Ask yourself, do I want to be pissed off? Because we get pissed off. You're pissing me off. You better shut up. No, just ask, do I want to be pissed off right now? And if being pissed off is going to serve anything for me right now, nah. And just ignore the folks. But some of us, we're pissed off. So he's not telling you to suppress the feeling, because remember, feelings is emotion. Emotion is energy. It never goes. It just shifts. Energy, that ain't going nowhere. So don't be trying to go block that. Oh, you're stealing. It ain't going nowhere. He's not telling you to transcend it either. He's telling you to examine it and to ask that one question: did it come from me, or was this installed? And you can even look fast and say, is that person pissing me off? Is they making me feel this way on purpose? Because maybe they're an NPC. Maybe that's their job, is to raise your energy and deplete you and all of this by setting you off. That's the diagnostics. That is the tool that they carved into the imperishable stones 3,000 years ago, by the way. And here's what makes it operational today. So let's get into that before we got about 15 more minutes. So if you're in a conversation, someone's saying something tightens your throat, like, or your chest, like I'm saying, and it's a familiar pattern activates, then the version of you that always respond that certain way is about to respond that way. You can't stop it. You know how people say, I'm going to trigger it, I'm going to trigger a response, or the doctor said, what's your triggers? You know, the CIA, they look for triggers when they look for murderers and all of this stuff. And so before you do, just one breath, one question. You don't need to go to a therapist for this. Just say this thing. Did this come from me, or was it installed? Now, you got to remember, we're going to use the word install because now we know it's a program, it's from somewhere else. If you want to blame it on something else, then that's not going to work for you. And again, it's not long analysis, not therapist. It's just one question, directed inward toward the pattern. Did it come from me, or was it installed? And that is the gap, ladies and gentlemen, that was describing, and that is the gap between effect and cause, not cause and effect that they teach us, effect and cause, between the word above and the pattern below. You get that? Get how it was inverted, cause and effect, instead of effect and cause. So that was the gap. And we're talking between that world above the pattern below. So now we're getting the true meaning of this thing. We're getting a real true meaning. And so that gap is where the freedom lies. So look at this photograph. Did it come from me, or was it installed? You got a choice right there. And what this taught me is the tool is not complicating anything. The tool is too small to do that. But one breath, one question, and one error, that's it. It's not complicated. And it works because of exactly what the gospel of truth, documented ignorance, vanishes of itself when light appears. So you see the dark side, and when the light side appears, it's gone. So you don't have to defeat the pattern. You just have to see it. And see the patterns cannot operate with the same authority of being unseen is where we're going with this. So there's a piece that every self-help system, every mindful app, every wellness retreat has been circling around and landing on. And this is not, or I would say the question is not that, is how do I feel better? Remember how they do this? We see this everywhere. How do I feel better? That question that Thoth was asking, the question the Gnostics was asking, it was something totally different. So I want you to understand this. So when you start seeing these people, how do you feel better? How do you want to make yourself feel better? The question was, what is running in me that is producing what I keep experiencing? You can write that down. You can write that down like it was church or something. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, put that down. What is running in me that is producing what I keep experiencing? So the other day, and it's kind of funny because when I went to the doctor for one thing, and I walked out today and I got foot pain, very horrific pain, because they put a needle about this long in my foot. And supposed to stop pain, but it's causing more pain. But the only way I dealt with it and still dealing with it is that I'm not saying that I'm in pain. I'm saying pain has entered my consciousness. Boy, that's a little more powerful. And not until I recognize it that I feel it. So the whole time I'm talking to you and everything else, I don't even know it's there because I have addressed it in my consciousness. But the minute I label it now that I'm in pain, just like now, I can feel my foot. Yeah, pretty dramatic there, by the way. So that is completely different question. That is the question that changes what you examine, by the way. And because once you ask the question, you're no longer a victim of the pattern. You're an observer. And the observer is not inside the system being observed. That's the beautiful part of me just saying I recognize pain in my conscious, in my orbit. What's going on with that? And the tablet itself confirms what happened when the observer activates. In tablet number 6, it says, only by knowing can thou overcome it, and only by wisdom can Only by knowing thou can overcome, and only by wisdom can thou hope to be free. Not by fighting, not by discipline, not by willpower, by knowing. That's what I'm talking about. So the pattern is knowing the freedom, seeing the pattern. Seeing is the exit from the system. Remember, that's the manual, and that's the one of the things that we have to think about. And like I said, for then, and there was another moment I felt enough, and when I understood that freedom was not something that to be built or earned, it was a natural result of seeing what was already running. And so that cage was never locked from the outside. It was maintained from the inside by a pattern that had never been examined. So we're locking ourselves up. And here's what the Gnostics confirmed 15 centuries later, that without access to a single line of these tablets. How did they know this? And like I said, you got to investigate that. So the gospel of truth describes that the moment knowledge activates in a person, which is you, me, all of us. I said it a while ago. Happy is the man who comes himself and awakens. Happy is the man who comes to himself and awakens. He come to himself, not to a teaching, not to a belief system, and not to a damn institution for show. He comes to himself, to you, to yourself. That's powerful, people. That is where the freedom is. That is where it always been. And that is exactly what both traditions were independently pointing toward. Because of them, they found the same thing in the same place. I'm just taking us to the top of the hour, so y'all just kind of know where we are. Because I was getting ready to stop, but I haven't told you the best part yet. So I think I better, since you've been here this long, I better go and give you the best part, because what happens when a person actually applies this, when the observer activates, and when the pattern is seen, and when the program that was running is no longer running below awareness, boy, it's not just personal now. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that part. See, the Gnostics documented something extraordinary about what happens next, and about what it does to the people around you, about what it does to the world above you, and what is reflecting the pattern. And Thoth, in the final tablet, made a promise, and he made a promise to nobody. You know, you're not going to hear this taught in schools or anything else. And so let's get down to this. And I promise to get you out of here in 10 minutes or less. He said that I thought, and when we're talking about thought, okay, he made a promise in that final tablets, and he made a promise to everybody. It's actually a promise. It was tablet 12, the law of cause and effect, the last major teaching before he prepares to leave. Remember, that is another question, by the way. We got to do a whole story on that. But he writes in the tablet 12, he says, all effects shall bring forth its causes as effects grow or grew from the first cause. Interesting, by the way. And it says, look in the cause thou shalt bring into being, and surely thou shalt see that all is effect, so to speak. I thought that was pretty interesting for, what he was saying there, because there was a little more after that, but like I said, we're coming to a close on this, but this is the most important part. And just to give us some thoughts about this right now, only by knowing, he says, all effects shall bring forth its causes. All effect grew from the first cause. Look into the cause thou shalt bring into being, and surely thou shalt see that is effect. I thought that's interesting. Maybe I'm the only one thinking it's interesting, but I think it's interesting from there. Very interesting, by the way. And I want you to read it when you get a chance, if you ever find it, when it says, as I to thee am a God by knowledge, so ye shall be gods of future because of knowledge above them. Now, this is why I waited to say this. We always hear this a lot, but he says, as I to thee am a God by my knowledge, So ye too shall be gods of the future because of your knowledge far above theirs. I remember telling my nephew one time, my cousin, by the way, and I was giving him a lesson on why he works for me at that time. And, and I said, because I know some of you don't know. His father, was an air conditioner man. I said, why do you think I call your dad to fix my air conditioner? Because he knows something I don't know. I got to pay it, but I don't know how to fix my damn air conditioner. So that's what knowledge does. It's not make you a god, or so to speak, but it get you a point where somebody going to bow down on a hot ass day and say, can you get there? I'll pay extra for you to come and get my air back on because I don't know how to fix the compressor. you get what I'm saying? So he's talking about knowledge. He's talking about that. So he's talking about gods of the future because of your knowledge. He's not speaking to priests. He's not speaking to initiates who have passed years of some training. He's speaking to anyone who receives this knowledge and applies it. See, this is where people are not hearing that I'm a god and they walking around, I'm a god because I'm black, or I'm walking around because I'm a god because, no, if you don't know sugar, honey, iced tea, you're not that. And that is the promise. And that is what was buried. That was what was buried, people, all across the board. Gods of the future. See yourself in this image that I put here. Let that land for a moment. Not the word gods. That will be trigger, the wrong reaction to anyone who has been conditioned to fear it. It's not what we're talking about. What Thoth is describing is a natural state of consciousness that can see its own program. That is what he's talking about. A consciousness that observes the pattern instead of being ran by it. A consciousness is what he's saying that examines the cause instead of experiencing the effects. That is not supernatural. That is what a human being actually is when the program is no longer running below awareness. That's all. We get that. And I want you to think about the last time you were in a conversation and something triggered you. But instead of reacting, you paused. One breath, one inward turn. And you asked, did this come from me? Or was it installed? Try it. Try it tonight. Try it tomorrow at work. Try it. And in that pause, something's going to shift, and not dramatically, not with the light from the ceiling. It's going to be a global change. The room will probably feel different. And that person across from you felt different because they're going to feel it because you're not reacting the same way. And not because they changed, not because you are no longer the pattern responded to, because you're like, no, they're still who they are. Stupid does what stupid does, as far as Gump would say. And you are the observer, and the observer is not inside the loop. And so here's the moment that I can see how my work and what I'm doing contributes to the greater good. When I understood that applying this was not just a personal liberation, it was the one thing that changes everything and everything downstream. So I start saying, hey, Roderick, you have a platform. You are skilled to do what you want to do. You're learning to be a better storyteller. You're trying to start your community. And I was already starting my community. Now it's deeper now. Because as above, so below runs in both directions, people. And when that pattern below changes the world, above changes. Not eventually, not metaphorically or metaphysically or whatever you want to call it. Immediately in the room, in the relationship. I'm already thinking better to serve people, not just being a servant leader, but a better way. How do I serve better? But I have to serve better by knowing more. And this is the piece that the Gnostics documented. And my team will tell you all this week, hey, I've been thinking of this. We're going to do this. And now reflecting on me. It's no more. It's me. It's what I'm doing. Am I doing what I love to do? Am I doing what I want to do? Is it because of what's happening on the outside, something on the inside? Is it something running me from the inside that I'm chasing these bills over here, that I'm causing me to do this over here? I'm like, whoa. But it does affect a lot of other people, by the way. And so when one person stops feeding the pattern, and when one consciousness moves from automatic reaction to conscious observation, the person around them cannot maintain the same dynamics. It just works for all of us at the end of the day. It's not willpower. It's not authority. It's physics. All right, it's physics. And physics, it looks like psychics earlier, right? I'm just going to laugh about that later. Anyway, we'll get back to that. I'll let y'all know. A pattern requires two participants running unconsciously for the dynamic to persist. And the moment one participant becomes the observer, the loops break. So I want you to know you can do that. And just take a look at this picture. The chain breaks. And that's what Thoth was promising when he said, gods of the future, because of your knowledge, not power over others, not power of the pattern inside of you, gods of the future because of your knowledge is what he's saying. And in the final supplement tablet, the tablet 14, in his last words, he says, before I depart, I give you the secrets of how ye may rise from the bondage of darkness and cast off the fetters of flesh that have bound ye, and rise from the darkness into the light. He says, cast off those fetters that have bound you. We got 4 minutes left. And not through initiation, not through ceremony, not through any authority standing between you and the knowledge, is what he's saying. And he's saying through knowledge itself, applied today in the room where the patterns run. People, that's greatness all across the board. And this is where those Gnostics and Thoth arrived to the same destinations in the same direction. They both did, 100%. And it is so important for all of us to understand this. And again, we can talk about the gospel of truth in every way possible once we're doing what we're doing. And like I said, if you have, got to a point to where you, are liking some of these videos, again, he says, rise from the darkness of light, both of them describing the same movement, not upward, not downward, but inward. And the place where the pattern lives that he's talking about is in the place where it's caused to operates, to the place where the program was installed, and where it can be seen, and where it seems to lose the authority that only unseen the carry, so to speak, is what he's saying. And here's the real question that matters. So as we come into our 2 minutes here, everything that you ever have wanted to change, every external ceiling, every repeating dynamic, every system that seems immovable has a cause, is what we're talking about here. And that cause is not out there in the hands of people who benefit from it, is what he's trying to say. And so we have to look inward. The cause is in a pattern that's running below awareness in every position living under it. And like I say, on Friday, I'm going to release our conscious awareness shirts. I put them on a Pacific website. You can get you some. You're going to love them. There's a couple of them. The Gnostic said, about the visible world. And so therefore, the most single powerful act available to any human being is not protest. It's not rebellion. It's not resistance. It's examination. You got to examine it. Your eyes are useless when your mind is blind. You got to turn attention inward. You got to find the pattern. You got to name the pattern, and you got to watch the pattern without becoming it. And that's the world above, which was also a mirror, always been a mirror, and begins to reflect something different. And if any of this is landing for you as we come to a close tonight, and if you're feeling the weight of the pattern that you've been, then just work on it. All I want you to do is just know something important when we come down to this, as I get us out of here, so to speak. You're not broken. You're not never broken, to be exact. You're just running a program that was handed to you before you were old enough to choose how to refuse it. And the moment you see that, and the moment you can name that pattern, once again, instead of being named by it, don't let nobody call you crazy. Go look for crazy. That's what I'm saying. You're not crazy. You crazy appear, but you're not that. I did what I said I did, but ain't that. Not all at once, though. Okay. I love each and every one of you. I really love what we do. Yeah, I could have kept going another 10 minutes because I talk for a living. It's what I do. But I wanted to give you, if you're here for the first time, to subscribe to our channel. If when this video is over, if you all can post comments so that the algorithm start pushing our videos. If you like learning and going through and exploring truth in this way versus us just talking about major conspiracies, I want to know that. I just want to know everything and how this is affecting you and the value that you're getting from it. And like I said, for those of you, my heart tells me to close this off with our inner circle, but because it does help us a little bit, and knowing that collective conscious and knowledge is out there, that I'm trying to give an opportunity. And I know financially sometimes it's just not a great time to do everything. That's cool. Because again, you got to get your disc, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to get and everything tonight. And so we will discuss that. I will probably end this with the 2 minutes. So if you don't want to get to that, you can, of how to get this and contact me personally and all those things. And then we'll go from there. I'll be here tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So definitely we'll be here tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Probably we're going to go deeper in a couple more areas, but it'll be a little more, I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. But every day you're going to walk away with something. Every single day from now on is my goal. You're going to walk away with something. And that's me activating the inner in me that I'm supposed to be doing and everything else. And so we do that. I love you. So let me check the chats real quick. Thank you. There we go. I came in late. Okay. Thank you, Rob, for the bunches. Appreciate it. M3652. We're only growth with the types of format. We are only going to grow with this type of format, and it opens up conspiracies all by itself. Great point. Great point. Noah's life. I'll go with that 100%. And we have the last time we had Eyes of Horus, really amnesia. Yep. All right. Where can I buy that hat? You can find this particular hat. I found this on Etsy. Go to Etsy, and it's like $65. I love it because it goes with my lapis lazuli mala. But I got this from Etsy. I don't make these or whatever. So, yeah, just look for crystal hats, and they got one with a little one on the side, and then this one. I just like this one, and they have 3 or 4 crystal options. And they do that as well. All right. Loving the deep consciousness. Okay, we'll go with that. And thank you, Holly. Yeah, make sure y'all get y'all shea butter. We'll go with that. And like I say, I will end it with I just hope you don't miss out. I'm telling you. And if what we're talking about is deep, boy, there's some stuff in here to blow you away. Love you guys. And I'll end it with that. I want to show you the future, tomorrow's leaders, insiders, people who got enough information that they can start their own, pass down to the next generation, where maybe their grandkids and all that's going to have things that will be disappeared, will be gone in years. Just like the sacred scrolls that we're talking about that was buried. Stuff that is being buried, but yet copies exist. Information on esoteric knowledge, languages, books, everything, all out here. A library, 20,000 books, 20,000 audio files from all over the world, 5,000 videos. Here, these people right here that I'm showing you, these people that are receiving these drives, who are now in that inner circle, who have now made the investment of this world, these are the people. I just wish that you were one of them. You were inside our inside circle, and you had information. And if you want me to get this to you, you can email me on my personal email address, rod@roderickmartin.com. But I will tell you, there is an investment. When you email me, I'll reply to you with the details of what we need to do. And then once you confirm those details and that you want to move forward, then supply your contact telephone number, and I will call you from my personal cell phone, and then we will go from there and set this thing up. And then you have an option to be part of our inner circle if that's what you want. We're going to help each other with collective consciousness of knowledge learning. Man, I appreciate you, and you are going to be appreciated. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, so there we are. That was it. Get your life, and let's just look at things that we're doing. And yeah, if you want those files and stuff, go to email Roderick Martin. Rod at Roderick Martin's the email address, and I'll send you the information. Like I say, just start now. You're gonna need a few $100 for the external drive that needs to hold all this information. Then we'll go from there too. But anyway, y'all take care. Let's go. We out.